Namaste, beautiful souls. Welcome. This evening, I am here to share with you some initial reflections of the ecological based deck that was sent to me by the creators team to review. And before I said yes to this, I had a look at some of the other videos, other content that is on the web to make sure that this was a deck that was in alignment with how I work, philosophies of life, and so forth. And so it was with great pleasure that I received this deck, and I said yes to the Glowwood team. And so today I'm going to share with you how I have been my process of getting to know this oracle deck, and it really is a magical piece of work, and I hope that you enjoy this as much as I have been making my way through and getting to know this. Now, first thing you should know is that this deck is a bit of a project to get to know. And I suppose, as with any oracle deck, you can read it straight out of the box. However, that is not the um, I want to say that is not the forte of the Glowwood. I believe in getting to know the Glowwood is getting to know the details of the deck, getting to understand its themes, its suits, its symbols, and to better understand the way that it is organized. And hi, Danielle. And what I'm going to present here is one of the many layers of this deck, and I'm going to talk about something that appears very late in the guidebook, where the creator talks about timelines of nature. And to me, the reason that I am starting here, and I'm going to share with you a diagram that is in the back of the guidebook, and we'll talk about card stock and all those other things a little bit later on. Hi, Jaylee. Uh, is because this has impacted me personally most recently. And looking at being in nature, observing what is thriving and not thriving, observing the changes that are happening in the forest around me has become quite perplexing. And in the very short time that this deck has been in my hands, I have come to understand at least two of the species that are around me and why perhaps they no longer need to be in this forest, which is um, in a place, in a time of change. And this really affected me. So I'm going to share with you most of the cards as we go through the timelines. And I'm going to read with you, if you do have the guidebook, from page 262 to 63. The composition of a landscape naturally changes over time. A phenomenon known as ecological succession allows us to place events in order, should we wish to do so during our readings. I think understanding this part of the deck is an integral part of working with the deck if you are planning to bring in um, multiple cards to do a reading. Okay. Ecological succession simply means that beings tend to arrive when the time is right for them in the ecosystem. And accordingly, when the time is they are no longer needed in the system, their energy will change into something else. So I've never seen this sort of concept before in an oracle deck, and I'm really excited to dive into this, and I'm going to share with you quite a few things today. I have canceled my Facebook chat, which comes after this, because I know that I'm going to go past the hour mark. So if you need to come back and watch the replay, please do so. I will be doing one thread from the book, as well as pulling out a couple other oracles and comparing how I work with them. Okay. The following is the most common scenario. At first, there is simply rock. And so in this deck, we have rocks such as obsidian, the magnetite, limestone, and each card has the preposition the before it. And this to me takes on an anthropomorphic kind of energy. And I'm not quite sure if that's the right word. I want to say it honors the living being that limestone is. It honors the living being that obsidian is. If you get what I mean. You know, it has an energy to put that little tiny word before. And I don't think this is coming from a Romance language or a translation of that. There's something to that little tiny detail. So at first there is simply rock, and here's a few that I'm sharing with you. Granite, which is a rock I am so very, oh my goodness, this is a rock that I sit in mesmerized with pretty much on a daily basis. Every time I'm at the beach, every time I go for a walk, this is really something. Um, where this as the beginning takes me, um, it transforms the depth and the layers of connection with rock. Many of you know that I also work with crystals, and this is one of my connections with crystal rocks of various kinds, is that I understand how old these beings are, and if I work with them, there is a hope that I will be able to connect through time, through the ages. Okay. Hi, Liz. Welcome. Then, and I hope I have this all sort of, forgive me if there's little pauses here. Then lichens arrive and begin to chemically alter the ground, weathering it down into smaller particles. And so, through, on top of, amongst the rocks, lichens begin to appear, weathering the rocks. So these are cards that have the potential to um, perhaps make it easier. If you think about all of this metaphorically and what the rocks represent, they are the foundation, they are the beginnings, they are the solidity from which we are. They're all that we know. They are history, they are ancestry. And in order for us to feel that and dive into that, we we need to take it apart into pieces. And so the idea for me, what I'm feeling here with a lichen, this energy, is that it helps us to decompose and to deconstruct a little bit. And I love the way that um, this timeline can be used within the deck to, and that because there are so many pieces, we're I'll get into the symbols in a little bit. We're working with this idea of timeline as well as an interaction among cards, as well as the symbols that appear around the outside of the card. I'll get to shortly. Liverworts and mosses appear and continue to do the work. There are in this deck an abundance of fungi cards. The deck in total has 78 cards. And the fungi or fungi cards, there are 14 of them. And they they are really if you work with fungus, these are really beautiful cards, and some of them I will talk about a little bit later because they have these magical symbiotic relationships with other beings in um, some of them appear earlier in the timeline than others, and they are essential, of course, to the feeding, the connection of all life. And so the significance of 14 fungi cards in this deck feels it has an importance. I believe there are 19 animal cards, so it is definitely it's the second largest group of cards in the deck. Some of these I am intimately familiar with, and others, um, I'm very curious to get to know. And one of the things that is on my to-do list for the fall is to, um, take some foraging classes with a local group here. Okay. Some of these arrivals survive and some do not. This isn't the easiest environment to live in. Those that die decompose and turn into soil. And we have several soil cards in the deck. Some of them are more soil-like than others, and some are more solid. Now, once we have soil, the first grasses and flowers can arrive and begin to establish the early partnerships with the fungi and pollinators above the ground. And so we begin to develop these layers within the deck, and we have early grasses such as hairy sedge and barley. And then above the ground, we have pollinators. And when I refer to the animals in the deck, these are all, as we call them in my shamanic group, creepy crawlies. So we're talking about insects. And one thing that is not in the description in the timeline here um, is the evolution of how the earthworm and the centipede, when they fit in. And one of the things that I really like that Lisa, the creator of this deck, is, I will tell you her name. And also, once I sign off, I'm going to link an interview that I just listened to. Her name is Lisa Biletska, and she is presently living in the Ukraine, and she is from the US. One of the things that she describes in this amazing companion book is that the invitation for this deck is to take the learning beyond the cards themselves. And that may be through a little bit of research on the net, but the hope is that you will take this into the forest yourself, into your own ecology around you, and share that with her. Into this prepared environment, so into the soils and the grasses and the flowers that we developed, that I shared with you some of the flowers. And the flowers are also divided into flowers that would appear early in the ecology, as well as um, some that would arrive later once a forest was fully established. And I'm not going to take the time here to share that with you. Mistletoe, of course, I'm sure you're aware, is a what's it called? It lives on trees, right? So the trees have to be established before mistletoe would would arrive. And soon they share their space or leave to make room for other types of trees. And then the late successional trees. The trees will keep taking over the territory and coexist in various proportions until a relatively stable environment is established. For instance, a mixed forest consisting of oak and some hornbeam. Underneath and around them grow those fungi, lichens, grasses, and animals that like to coexist with trees. This is the climax forest. It will stay this way until a major disturbance, a fire, a flood, a drought, clears space in which some of this cycle can repeat once more. And so the trees in this deck are organized into those that appear in an early forest. Let me get some of the trees for you. Um, and trees that would appear like the oak and the fir once a forest was established, and the trees that are important to the beginning establishment of that ecology um, have expired. And this is so interesting because this is what's happening around me at this time. And the alder trees seem to be falling at a rapid rate. It's as if they're no longer needed. They are just like twigs in every time we have a windstorm, more and more alders are falling. And it's almost as if the larger, the evergreens, all of the plant life that is on the floor and the animals, the flora, the fauna no longer need the altars. And so the alders are disappearing. And it's really interesting to witness the attitude of the people in this neighborhood listening to the seeming chaos that the alders are creating. But the truth is that their cycle, right? This is a cycle that is um, that we need to respect. Okay, so this is one of the layers, and that is to find, to see, and begin to understand the the cards that represent something that is more established as opposed to something that is or of origin or something that is part of a process and doesn't have longevity, doesn't have a long lifetime, isn't expected to live for hundreds and thousands of years. Okay, so that's one mirror. Okay. Now, um, next, I want to talk a little bit about the symbols that appear around the edges of the card. Now, this particular symbol here on the bottom right corner of the oak card is a symbol that appears as a single stick, double, triple, and quadruple stick. And depending on how many sticks there are, it tells you the age of the forest where this tree would thrive. If it is early in the ecology or later in the ecology. And this is a climax forest tree, the oak tree. So there are four sticks. And then, excuse me, around the edge of the tree are other symbols, and we're going to look at a few of those as we go through. Okay, all right. I want to go to, um, as an example, to one of the symbols, which is slow. And I have this all organized, so you're just going to have to bear with me here. I'll see if I can quickly adapt here. All right, let's go to the symbol of support. In the guidebook, there are single pages for each of the symbols that appear around each of the cards. And I go to the back here, and I have done a quick inventory of symbols. I'm not quite done, but for support, I went through all of the cards. Here we go. So here is the support page. And there are only 5 cards that fit in with this particular symbol. And the symbol here you can see is a young tree that is supported by some wood stakes. And I want to read to you the description for this particular symbol. Providing physical or metaphysical structures to uphold itself or others, preventing landslides, offering scaffolding for other elements, especially the more subtle or delicate, stability, something to lean on, a pension fund, financial or psychological support of a friend, grounding energy. So in this particular group, not only do we have fireweed, we have oak and willow. Here is the willow card. Here is the oak card. And if these cards were to show up in a reading, they would embody, especially if more than one of them showed up, it would tell you that you have this energy of stability, and I wanna say trust in something that is going to help you get through this particular time, the concern that the query that you bring forth in a reading. And so I think um, one of the doors into this deck is to collect all of the cards that have a common symbol and get to know all of the support cards. So you see these 5 cards together, and what I am doing is actually writing in I think I'm halfway through the deck, and I'm writing all of the cards, on this page on the back for each of the symbols, sort of creating my own index, if you will. I have also so the other one I wanted to look at was slow, and I will find you a slow card. So for this in the slow group, we also have 5 cards, and they were all beautifully organized, but of course, here's one for you. Okay. Uh, and what I'm gonna do, let's actually look at this card in detail after I talk a little bit about the characteristics of the slow symbol. So the slow symbol is over here on the side. It is a snail with a trail of the slime that is left behind a snail. And the description for slow is languid, lazy, leisurely, phlegmatic, late, thoughtful, deliberating, late bloomer, serene, progressing unhurriedly. And this might sound like a bit like a, I don't know, a Knight of Pentacles energy or something, right? So this is something to be cultivated, to take your time with, unhurriedly, perhaps through a complex or lengthy process. And this would contrast to a series of cards that had a symbol for short life, something that needed to be managed now or taken advantage of now. In this group, there are 5. Clay is one, Fumort, which you're looking at, 2 of the lichens as well as granite. So I'm gonna to the actual description for this card, and this takes up the bulk of the bulk of the book. And I'm just going to show you how this appears in the guidebook. So we do have Latin names, and this is something that you've probably heard me comment on before. I have quite a collection of plant oracles, and I find it very useful to have the Latin name on the card or as an easy reference because sometimes, depending on where you live in the world, the common name for certain plants changes. So it's always a good idea to check that we're talking about apples and apples by confirming the Latin name. This is the group, and I'm going to get to that in just a little bit. So there are, and I've touched on this, there are several groups of cards. They are not evenly divided in the deck. The largest group, as I mentioned, are the creepy crawlies and the fungus. For sure, that is a very large group. We have 11 flowers, lots of. I'll come back. The symbols. So the symbols that I have been referring to, such as slow and support, are listed for each card. And so the symbols for Fumort, besides what did we talk about? Slow, are nourishing, shade, social, special association, and I want to share with you, this is a really interesting one, and transience. And so you can take each of these keywords here and go to the back of the book and read more about the intention for each of those symbols. Okay, so the cards that you want to work with are definitely worth taking time to dive into. Then we have a description of the associations of each of the cards. So this tells you which animals, which creepy crawlies this plant supports, if it enhances these creepy crawlies, or if it is destroys them. Also, it talks about the other plants, mosses, lichens, and trees that are supported by or destroyed by this plant. So associations is, you can see that would be a really important part in looking and comparing cards to see if you have 2 cards in a reading that destroy each other or they support each other, right? The Fumort has a very special association, and that is with the bee. It's not specified as the honeybee, which is the card that is in the deck. And I may or may not be able to find it in the flash. I did show it to you earlier. Okay, we'll have to come back. And the relationship with the honeybee is that it is pollinated by the bee. Its seeds are spread. Just a second here. Kumort is pollinated by the bee. Its seeds are spread by the ant, and it is the only food eaten by the clouded Apollo. And the clouded Apollo is creepy crawly. So there's this, I suppose if in a reading you had the Fumort and the Clouded Apollo card come together, it would indicate a beautiful symbiotic relationship of, uh, like if you were doing, talking about relationship among humans, it would symbolize a beautiful connection, a long-term connection, support one another, something like that. So there's a lot of, the plants, flowers, animals are not intended to be archetypes, but they are mirrors of everything that we are going through and everything, all the kinds of questions that we use for inquiries when we're reading cards. And then the book goes on with descriptions, taking advantage of opportunities that are present for short periods of time, existing in the beginning through practical, uh, expeditious, ephemeral, the bounty of practicality. And the descriptions for each of the cards are sufficient for you to find uh, a word, a phrase that brings in a connection to help you deepen your understanding why this card is showing up at any given time. Okay. I I'm not going to do a complete flip through of all 78 cards, but what I would like to do now is to put the cards together and give them a shuffle. This is, like I said, it's a large deck of cards. These cards are on a beautiful, I want to say black core cardstock, more than 300 GSM, and edged in black. And I'm not sure if that's just if they're actually edged in black or that is the black core that is showing through. And I have not shuffled these cards yet, so I will do that for the first time with you as my witness while I show you the whole deck of cards here. These beautiful card backs. Yeah. You need large, strong hands to ripple and shuffle. And I suppose over time, the cards will soften a little bit. And the spread that I want to share with you today is called the branch. The branch. It is a 4-card spread. And so, what I would like to invite you to do right now is to think of a situation or an event that is on the forefront of your mind. And I'm going to do my best to weave together any information I can glean from the timeline of the cards that appear. And we will take time to look at each of the guidebook pages for the cards as they show up. So I can help you, so I can show you how very early in my process with this deck that I am and how I would approach it. Okay. So again, close your eyes, take a deep breath in and out, and consider a situation, event, or condition through time. All right, so I'm personally reflecting on an upcoming event, something that, though I have only received good messages about, still is causing me some concern. So I'm gonna cut the deck, and I'll show you the shape of the spread, and then we'll endeavor to read the cards. So one card is placed at the bottom. It's only a 4-card spread, and this is the stem. It reflects the objective situation, the departure point, the foundational principle. This is the first leaf. This empathizes, interprets, and responds to the objective of the situation. This is a really interesting spread because if you are contemplating a particular event or situation, this card, the first card, is going to show you pretty quickly whether it is in alignment with why you created this event or why you are participating in this event in the first place. Okay. And then there is an emotional response. So the leaf is an emotional response to the event. And then we have another layer of the stem. This guides and suggests a way and provides direction. This is going to be a very useful card for me. And then the final card, this is the second leaf. This is the second leaf. It embodies the guide's promise, the potential result, and the gift that may unfold and grow from the stem. Okay, all right. So let's go down to the first card, the objective situation, the foundation, and what you are standing on. So we have the centipede. The centipede is a creepy crawly. The centipede lives beneath on the earth, right? This is the animal category, obviously. And I'm going to read to you the other keywords to help us. Depth, depth. So the event, the what you are considering, just expand on how significant this is. This goes deep, right? So this is I would interpret this as a very positive keyword. Dominance, and so there is strength to that, and right now I'm gonna flip to the back of the book and go to the dominance, description for you. This is a strong energy that in its shadow has the capacity to weaken other energies. This is a strong influence. It has a hierarchical structure in which this element may vie for the top position, pulling attention, resources, and spaces towards itself. A successful takeover. Now, in terms of the particular situation that I'm considering, this is a good thing because this is something that I want to share, to reveal, to become more day to day among other people. And so while you look at a card and you look at a centipede and you think of the different encounters you have had with the centipede in the garden, maybe your only interpretation is the destruction of your vegetables or the times that you have been bitten by a centipede. But there is so much more here to this. Hi, Aisha. Welcome. Okay. So really, really cool. And I'm not going to read the whole description for the centipede, but I think you kind of get where we're going here. Uh, Another keyword is longevity. Longevity. So that's great, right? I mean, don't know what your consideration is, but longevity is a wonderful keyword. And mobility, which means it can go places. It's flexible. You don't have to stay in the same location. You can take it with you, okay? All right, so let's go to the first leaf. And the first leaf is uh, empathizer, resonator, subjective take. It empathizes, interprets, and responds to the first card. Oh, okay. And I did actually pull out all the medicine cards. So this is chaga, which is a medicine. It is a mushroom. It's a fungi. And it is also um, it one of its keywords is rare. It's rare. Oh, Aisha, love thank you so much. It's beautiful. I love the way you're contributing to the chat here. All right, so chaga, early, exploitative, medicine, rare, special association, and transform. Uh, it reduces birch and alder, and in reducing birch and alder creates a very magic medicine. The silver lining in this situation is so obvious. The bright side is so much brighter than the dark side is dark. No, look past the white rot if you can. Yes, that is a small mess and slightly tragic. Decay in the heartwood of something you once celebrated and cherished. But just for a moment, look past that. Do you see it? This is rare and very special. It isn't what you were in the market for. It is not sold at the market. It arrives when the time is just right. It's, it found an opening and entered, riding in on a horse that, let's face it, was lame anyhow. Please enjoy this when you have it and recognize it for what it is. What a beautiful way to fail. Good work and good going. Keywords are sorry, I was reading the symbols earlier. The keywords are decay, had it coming, diamond in the rough, elixir, matters of the heart, and opens another door. And for me, this is so beautiful because in terms of the kind of situation I'm reflecting on, the power of transformation is really, really important. So these cards feel very supportive of what I am building. Okay. And you can see Aisha is finding connections here as well too with what is growing. All right, so let's go on back to the stem. So card number 3. I'm sorry, I'm a little parched. This guides and suggests a way, provides direction. So this is a continuation of the stem, and this is the snail. Interesting that we have and this is the first reading I've done with these cards. I've been looking at them, sorting them, categorizing them, but what I'm observing here, something about 2 animals in the center feels quite sophisticated. It feels quite developed. So, do you remember I was talking about the timeline at the beginning? This is something that is, and I think mobility most of the animals are mobile, so there's this idea of movement. Granted, the snail well, the snail has its home, right? The snail travels with its home. It's not fixed in any one place. So the idea of mobility is also really important here. This is something that you can continue to take with you and grow. And Liz, I hope this is helping you as well too in being patient with understanding the layers and levels of this card because I'm sure I'm weeks, months behind where you are with this deck as well too. All right, so let's go to the snail page. The guidebook is in alphabetical order. Everything is very easy to find. It's thread, right? It's threaded, so the pages stay together. Yeah, very nice quality book. Snail. What's wrong with my? Here we go. Flexible, homebody. This feels this feels really good to me. These keywords: protective, regeneration, and wet. Wet. I want to go to the descriptor for wet because that is a really interesting symbol. Occurring and prospering only when the communicational, emotional, connective spheres are abundantly flowing or full of permeable boundaries arising from such conditions. Oh, that's beautiful. Occurring and prospering only when the communicational, emotional, connective spheres are abundantly flowing or full. So, what I've done here is chosen a symbol that is resonating with me. And rather than overwhelming myself with every single symbol on the card, some which are more intuitive than others, taking one symbol and learning a little bit more about it. Okay, beautiful. Um, all right, here's something very interesting. The snail has a relationship with the centipede, and the snail is reduced by the centipede. What can we learn from that, or what can we be mindful of? What is a message? And it doesn't say it is, but it can be. And especially with that wet descriptor there that I just read to you, this feels like there is emotional vulnerability here. And the centipede to me feels a little fiery. And I think this is important not to trample upon the emotional development of the event or the participants of it. I also think it's very significant that there is the potential really for one of these animals to destroy the other. And so part of that lesson here is to learn how we can work together. And then we have a reflection in the first leaf here that talks about so that particular fungi has the potential to destroy the tree. And so we're also looking at tremendous layers of transformation here. There is something that is building and growing and strengthening and simultaneously transforming. The snail cultivates elaborate and complex internal abilities in order to interact with the outer world on its own terms. This concerns almost all aspects of its being: travel, home, security, love, conflict, difficulty, restoration, improvement. This is a being of self knowledge and tailored approaches. There is a strong homing instinct, and many difficulties are resolved by retreating inwards. It is an extra personal sense. There is a marked tendency towards using local resources and isolationist policies, strong regenerative potential. Okay. All right. So continue to reflect upon your situation, event. Let's go to the fourth card. So the fourth card is the outcome, the gift, the fruit, the promise. Hmm. This is one of the soil cards. Chernosm. Chernosm. Um, this particular symbol down here, I'll hold it up for you. You can see those little sticks in the bottom left corner are creating a shelter. This is a very wholesome environment in which many, many things can thrive. I believe on this card there are two vitality symbols at the top. Okay, let's go to the description. So this looks really good. It looks like whatever you had in mind has the ability to thrive and to grow, though it also will transform through change, right? It will evolve. And I think with those two animals in the center, being really mindful of the fire and water, the balance is very important. This soil is accommodating. It is a shelter. It is a nourisher. From a certain perspective, there could be no better starting advantage than these. The ground is primed, popular and highly desirable prizes are already within reach. Hardly any extra effort is required. Did anyone ever have it so good? This foundation, this backstory is a gift in itself. And of course, this is appearing in the gift position. Of course, one might find that such universally enjoyed and readily available delights as those promised here are not to one's taste. That, after all, one desires something more remote, more arcane, less tangible. Still, this substructure is one of the most rich, bountiful, and generous. So this is a very favorable response to what it was that you are reflecting. Okay. So in working with this, the Glowwood cards, there are 78 cards, and they are divided into several groups. The rocks that I described at the beginning are part of the soil category. The flowers and the grasses are part of the plant category, and there are, I believe, 5 cards that are not doubled up in any category, and those are plants. Fern is one of those cards. And then we have the animal cards, which are either pollinators or creepy crawlies. They either fly or they're creepy crawlies, so insect cards. We have 1 protist card, several lichen cards, and then there's 1 moss, the fire moss, which I believe you saw. And then we have the trees. And the trees are cards that um, are, as I mentioned, those little stick symbols. Some of them will appear in a more established forest, and some will appear earlier in the journey. So we have those layers of messages here as well too, based on when they would appear, the group that they appear in, as well as looking into further details of each of the cards. Okay. Um, so yeah, I think there are there are I have several suggestions if I were to contact the creator about some things I would add to the guidebook. If you haven't done so and you do have this book, and I know Liz mentioned that she is having a hard time with working with this deck. Like I said, I'm halfway through this process. I'm going to be putting the names of all of the cards that have this particular symbol on it in this list on this page as I get to know the deck. Okay. In the description box below, I said that I would share, compare, just mentioned a couple of other plant oracles that so why am I doing this? Because there are so many, many decks out there. And this is one that I thought of right away because the design of the cards looks very, very similar. I'm just going to put a few of them down here so you can see. We have mushroom cards. This one has herbs in it. I've shared this deck before a few times. It has cacti and lots of plants from, I want to say, different ecosystems. And while the graphic design is very similar, the uh, thoroughness through which the system of the deck is organized. This is the Botanical Oracle by Jessica Bott, Botanical Deck. It has a tarot deck and it has an oracle deck in the box. I'm very intrigued with this deck. But what this deck is missing is the layers and the levels of connection that Lisa has created in the Glowwood cards. There is a system of tarot that is built into the tarot section. There is a system that is built in a numerological system that is built into um, the oracle component as well too, but I don't always understand it. Um, it's a really pretty deck, but I think what you are getting in the Glowwood is something that has been thought through a little bit more thoroughly. Okay? Now, granted, the Glowwood is not a tarot; it is an oracle, but I think it's a deep plant reflection, not just plant, but ecological reflection. Oh, this is so interesting. Actually, I'm going to share something with you. So, one of my earlier experiences with diving deeper into yoga was to go to it was called a yoga ecology retreat. And I went to this retreat a few times. And at the yoga ecology retreat, we we learned how to talk to trees. I don't know if you can learn how, but we were set up in circumstances where we were encouraged to connect with the energy of plants and trees. This is where I learned about sand paintings and different ways that nature reflects back to us. And so when as I've been reading this guidebook, it takes me back to those experiences where we were guided into particular activities in nature so that we could see its reflection in our own souls. So there's there's a lot of great, there's a lot of great depth to this deck. I think it has the potential to be a very healing experience. This is one of my favorite plant oracles, and I have many plant oracle decks. The Druid plant oracle is one that I turn to when I'm looking for a little bit of history about a particular plant or a particular herb. Now, what the Glowwood is not is a yarrow. There's actually yarrow in there. I was gonna say there's no herbs in there. I would call yarrow, even though it's a flower, I would call it an herb. I make tea with yarrow. Um, there are there are trees, and there is moss, and there's different species of plants in the Druid Oracle, but this is more of a history lesson in Celtic culture. The readings that I have with this particular, oracle are very powerful. I'm sorry I didn't bring any cards to the table, but what you have in this deck is a whole scene, and there's often a reflection between the background and the foreground, and um, in many of the cards in this deck, you have multiple, what do you call it? Oh, you're welcome, Aisha. In many cards, like, you have multiple plants together, so it also talks about the symbiotic nature of the deck. This is not a very large deck. I don't think it has 40 cards, and I don't have that at the tip of my fingers. So, my point in bringing out a couple other oracles here is to say that or to reinforce that this is a very special, gift that Lisa has brought forward, and while, if you listen to the interview, I'll link it later down below. Um, she's very new to this sort of, concept of working with oracle cards. I think she's tapped into something really special here, and I think that this could be used in, Reiki training. I could also see this being used in any sort of a healing circle as well as, of course, with your own personal work. So there's a lot of potential here with the Glowwood, and, I wanna thank Philip for reaching out to me, and sending the deck, and I wanna thank Lisa for the artwork, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to continuing my journey in getting to know the cards, and I hope eventually that I can share them with you, um, in some other readings, if not to supplement other decks and so forth. Danielle, you're still here. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. And in the description box below, if you're interested, there's a coupon for the deck as well too, which I gladly share with you. Okay. Good night, everybody. Have a lovely evening, rest of your day, and if you're at the top of the day, enjoy and go for a walk in the forest. Namaste.